so many orders from Shark Tank, even though it's just a pre-order. And I didn't have packaging. I didn't have the spatties made. I didn't have packaging done. I had nothing. Finding the right company to help you was a big thing. I'm getting like around 8,000 to 9,000 every 2 weeks from Amazon.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. What was your job prior to starting your brand, and what made you jump into this entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah, well, so right now, life has changed a lot since I started my entrepreneur journey. I'm now a mom of 3, but when I started, just me and my husband, no kids. We had a dog and a cat. But I started this journey, a long time ago, probably about 12 years ago. And I was getting ready to go out on a date with my husband, and I was getting my makeup out of my foundation bottle, and I couldn't get any more out. And so I turned it over and I was like banging it on my hand, trying to get the makeup out, and it wasn't coming out. And I was like, ah. And so I went to the bathroom and I got a Q-tip and I put it in my makeup and was trying to put it on my face, and those like leaving little pieces of cotton on there, and it wasn't getting much out. I was like, this isn't going to work. So I took the cotton off and I just used a stick on the Q-tip. Took me forever, but I finally was able to get enough product out to finish putting my makeup on. And I was like, I don't want to throw this away because it's expensive and there's a lot in there still. And I was like, there's got to be something I can buy that will fit inside this makeup jar to get my makeup out. And so I went and Googled, several different things, and I couldn't find anything. And I was like, I bet you I can make something for myself to get this out. And so that's kind of where the idea came from. Mm-hmm. And then I remember, I don't recommend this, but I remember my husband coming home one day, and I had gone to like Hobby Lobby and bought like some material, and I was like melting plastic over the stove just trying to get the right shape. He's like, you can't do that. And I was like, sorry. But I finally found like some materials that worked. I tried a couple different things, and it worked good. And so I gave some to friends and family, and they tried it out and they liked it. And I was like, well, maybe I have something here. And so around this time, Shark Tank was casting, I think, for season 4. And I applied for it, and it was just like a handmade product. And they, liked it and called me back. And so that was really exciting. But so that's kind of where I got my start and why I decided to jump into it. Because, I was like, oh, I'm going to, possibly have this, national exposure for this, product that I have. So it wasn't planned. It just all kind of happened really quickly.
Interesting. I love that. Yeah. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm guessing there was nothing similar or competitive to it at the time, like in the market.
No, yeah, there was nothing on the market like it at the time. Mm-mm.
Wow. Did you try to like do any research that are people looking for this, or?
I did. Well, I didn't do much. So I made probably about 20 of them, 15, 20. And I put some on eBay to see, people would buy them and see if they liked them, what they thought about them. And they sold pretty quickly. And everybody, wrote back, said, oh, this is great. I've been looking for something like this. Do you have a bigger one? And that's when I made the Spatty Daddy, for like your lotion bottles or, the bigger products. And so, yeah. And then I guess my Shark Tank exposure, was the big, thing to see if people in the market wanted it. Because I had to do a pre-order because it wasn't made yet when the show aired.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Tell me about your brand name and how did you come up with it?
So my husband actually came up with the name Spatty. So he was thinking like a miniature spatula or a small spatula. And then he came up with Spatty for that. And then he also came up with Spatty Daddy as well. That's the bigger one. So he's a good name maker.
I love it. And you were making this at home, right?
I was. Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. So you're buying the materials and making it at home, and you're putting it on eBay. Were you selling on Amazon at all?
No, not that time. I wasn't. I wasn't even selling Amazon when I was on Shark Tank either. It was maybe a year after Shark Tank it was on Amazon. But yeah, it wasn't, right away.
When did you start selling this, or when did the idea develop?
So like everything happened like really fast. So I'm thinking, I can't remember exactly because it's been so long, but approximately, I thought about the idea like in March. And then I started making them pretty much right away. When I had the idea, I was able to do it. And I think I sold some like in April or May on eBay, and then applied for Shark Tank like around that same time. And then actually was flown out to film Shark Tank in July,
Wow.
and the episode aired in November. So it was all
Wow.
really quick.
That was super fast.
Yes.
And this was last year?
This was back in 2012.
2012. Okay, so this was a while ago.
Yeah.
Okay. And okay, let me see here. So I wanted to ask you about, so when you went to Shark Tank, there was no manufacturing, you were just making the parts yourself, selling it, and it all happened so fast, and they invited you on, and I looked at the video. You got a deal with Damien, and so where did that take you after that? What happened after that?
So we kind of did a deal. So yeah, my Shark Tank producers were great, because I was probably the only second product in history on the show that wasn't mass produced yet. That was still just handmade. There was Ava the elephant. I think hers was handmade too when she went on the show, and then mine was the second one. So I didn't expect to get on, but they, really pushed for me and, got it to happen. So I was excited about that. And yeah, when I went on, because I hadn't made the product, I didn't really know how much it was going to cost. I was a speech pathologist before I started making the spatty. I didn't have any business experience. So I was trying to research before I went on the show, like, well, how much would it cost to get this made? How much would a mold cost? And so I was just kind of estimating without really knowing, because I hadn't done anything yet. And so I was like, well, I think I'm going to sell them for, around $2-3, and then the mold should cost around, $50,000. And I was like, so, I'm looking, for about 50,000 so I can get the mold made and, get some products made.
Were you talking to manufacturers?
I had tried calling manufacturers about this, but they were all like, oh, this isn't going to sell. Are you sure you want to do this? And they weren't really like helping me on pricing. They're kind of pushing me away from it. And I was like, so I was trying to get some pricing ideas, and I had a call. I called like places in Florida to finally that person there was like, well, if you make this many on your mold, it probably costs around, this much to make. But then I didn't factor in like the packaging of it, the labor of it, everything else that goes into it. So once I finally did get the product made and I got it manufactured, I realized I had to charge more than that because of all the different pricing that went into it. And, I guess numbers up front before you do anything are one thing, but after you actually, manufacture it and make it, then the numbers come, real, and you see how much it actually does cost for it all. But Damon, he was great. All the sharks were great when I was on there. None of them were mean to me. They all kind of, were excited about it. And it was just too early for most of them. And I didn't know what I was doing too. So they're like, you're going to need a lot of my help, and I just can't give that to you. But yeah, Damon kind of helped me with some contacts and stuff that I needed. And he doesn't own any of the company, but if he gets my product into a store, he gets like a percentage of sales from that. So that's kind of how our deal went.
Nice. That's really good. And I see here that you punched in a bunch of numbers for the startup cost. You said the mold costs about $50,000. The design for the mold was $5,000. Is that right? Or is that for something else? I just want you to walk me real quick.
Yeah, I don't have that up right now, but yeah, I know the mold was around $50,000, and then we had to do, some production runs for the materials to pick out which material worked the best. So that might be what you're seeing there for that 5,000. Maybe that was them, trying to, do the few runs and see what would work and what didn't. Because some materials, I wanted it to where the tip, I wanted it over molded, and I didn't want the tip to be able to just pull off. So we tried different materials that would work together where the tip wouldn't come off, but also, I want it to be food safe because, people are going to be using our food, or I want it to be able to go into, beauty products. And, so we had to make sure, about BPA stuff and make sure everything was good that way. So, we worked with a few different materials and had to do a few different runs before, we found the right material to use.
Okay, so I'm guessing that was for the sampling. It
Okay, yeah,
says that you put
yeah,
$2,000, so you're like sampling with different materials and trying to get regulations to be safe with, what kind of materials you're using.
yeah.
Uh, and then you have an LLC. You started an LLC for $1,000. Did you hire a lawyer for that?
So yeah, we had the LLC. Well, so I started the LLC, so that cost money. You had to pay so much money to the state, to do the business, and then we had to change it to a S corp later on. So that cost money to do that change. And so yeah, and I don't know exact numbers. I'll just kind of estimate know what all this stuff costs as well too.
Yeah,
I
I
know
know.
that-
I can understand because it was a while back too. And it says here that you spent $1,000 for barcodes.
Yeah, I
Was
had to
that
buy barcodes with the GS1 barcodes that you have to have on all your products, and then that's something you have to pay yearly to keep. So I'm
how many
thinking,
barcodes did you have?
well, I have a lot. Even though I don't have that many products, each one, your product needs a barcode, your inner case needs a barcode, your master case needs a barcode. And then we were looking to do Canada. So I did, barcodes. I had to do different barcodes for their packaging, they said, whoever we were working with at the time, because I was doing different packaging I had to have French or something on my Canadian packaging. So I had to do different products for that. So then I had barcodes for that. And then if I was, we were doing like clip strips at one time. And so then we had to have barcodes for those inner boxes and those master boxes. And so it's just a bunch of different, I don't know how many I have, but we have a lot.
Yeah, and I'm guessing you bought a package for $1,000 of barcodes.
Yeah,
Usually they sell 10 barcodes for like $100 or $200.
Okay,
I
yeah, maybe.
forgot the exact price point,
Yeah,
but it might have been more back then. I'm
yeah.
not sure. And then it says that you spent $20,000 for the first production run for your inventory. So after you made the mold, you've spent $20,000 on materials and labor to make your first production run.
Yeah, it would have been something around that. Yeah, to make because I had to fulfill. So when people place their orders on Shark Tank, it was a pre-order. And I remember I took that money and we paid for all the products. And so, yeah, it was like around 20,000, to do that run and then to package the material and everything else.
Do you remember how many units was that run?
I think it's in my old QuickBooks. I don't know that QuickBooks updated. I don't know that. I think it only goes back to 2016. I'll have to look and see if I can find what it was. Let me make myself a note to go back and look. When QuickBooks when they changed something years ago, and I don't know that because it would have been back in 2012. And I think my records on there only go back to 2016. So I'll look.
I see.
And I don't even know if I had QuickBooks back in 2012. I'll see if I can find it.
Okay. Yeah, approximately, if you can remember, like, what was your first order? I mean, I don't know if you remember roughly, like, how many units did you order? It doesn't have to be exact.
Each product was like around 50 cents to run the product itself. So we'll say like 55 cents for like each one. So like maybe $1. And so, well, the bigger ones were like 50 cents. The smaller ones maybe were like 30 something cents. They've gone up, since then with the inflation and different things. So it's probably about 80 cents per set. I want to see. I'll see if I can get like a estimate.
Okay. And you were making those in the US.
Yes.
So did you ship straight from the manufacturer to the customers, or did you have like a fulfillment center?
So when it first happened, it was crazy. Life was crazy because we got so many orders from Shark Tank, even though it's just a pre-order, and I didn't have packaging. I didn't have the spatties made. I didn't have packaging done. I had nothing. So I remember I worked with this guy and he, made like a little card, and then we inserted the card into a vinyl sleeve, and then we used glue dots, and we put the glue dots on the card and put the spatty on top of it. And we put that to the vinyl sleeve and closed it and then taped the sleeve shut. And so we were doing that for every product. So we didn't have I wasn't using anybody at the time. It was me, my husband, my mom, and my dad. And on all the orders by ourselves. And I was still working full time as well. So I would work all day, come home. we would pack these things, probably till 11 o'clock, try to get out as many as we could. But it was a lot, to do. Luckily, I didn't have any kids at the time, but yeah, because we didn't have anybody fulfilling it. It was just us four, doing it all. And it wasn't like it was already pre-made like how I have now, where you just slip it in there. We were doing all this work, and I think I paid a few friends actually. I was like, "Can y'all help me?" I was like, "I'll pay y'all if y'all help do this." So yeah, I think I did have a few friends who would help them pack them as well until we got the actual blister packs and stuff done.
That must have been exciting. I mean, having that many orders and having to fulfill them, include your family and friends. I mean, these are some of the good problems that you want to have.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it was definitely exciting and fun. But I remember like crying a lot too, because people are like, "Where's my product? Why hasn't it shipped yet?" I'm like, I'm trying to get it out. Because it was like 3 months, I think after it aired, or 2 months after it aired before I could get the product out. Because, the mold was still being made when the show aired. And I remember I had like all these emails, and I was trying to answer the emails. And most people were really nice. But you'd have, a few people who would, get really angry. I'm like, "I'm very sorry. I'm doing, what I can." And
Oh my God, I can imagine. It's a nightmare. So do you know roughly like how much the packaging stuff like was costing you to order? So you ordered your product came to you, and then you ordered your packaging separately, and you put it together and ship it to the customer?
Yeah. So I do all that. I know I have like I have a list of my current numbers that I'm doing. I don't remember what the numbers were back in 2012.
Yeah.
I do know now here in the US, a set for the 6-inch and a 12-inch together to get them made with the pricing now, it's close to $2 to have it made. I'm thinking back then it was probably more like around $1.15 for the set, something like that. But I know it's gone up a good bit since I first started for the U.S. pricing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
At the time, because I was the only one in the market. There wasn't any competitors, so I could afford that extra cost because I had 100% in the market at the time.
And you had a website at the time, right? You had a website that you were selling on?
Yeah. So, I got on Shopify, and I made a website. And just had like, some homemade photos that I took and posted up. I was like, because we didn't have the money to really put into a website. I was putting the money towards the mold and putting the money towards, the manufacturing of the product. And so I didn't have any extra money to put into, a nice website. So it was it looked like a middle schooler did it, but I had something. I had something else. They could find it.
Yeah. And you were getting most of your traffic was coming from Shark Tank?
Yeah. So, because it wasn't sold anywhere else, when it first, I got my start on Shark Tank. So,
nice.
Yeah, I don't know many people that, that have that story, but yeah, so it was, I got national exposure and got, bang off the ground from, being on Shark Tank. And, then we started getting into stores after that.
That's pretty cool. And when did you launch on Amazon? Was it a year later?
Yeah, I'm thinking it was like probably it would have been at least a year later, because like I said, I didn't really know anything about business, and I started working with this guy named Jeremy Brockbank, who helped me with getting the GS1 barcode set up. It helped me with something called data trans that you have not. Trans, that's the company I use, but EDI, where a lot of companies will send orders and stuff through, and kind of getting my pricing list and stuff together. And he set me up, he's like, you need to sell on Amazon. So I found like a company because I was doing it myself, and I wasn't doing any of the marketing stuff on there. But Amazon's such a game. I don't understand it all, and so I'm thankful there are people who do understand it. So I started, working with the company, who got it on there, and then helped me out. Then I moved on to a different one, who did a great job with like the marketing and stuff on there for me. And I do Canal Consulting now, and they're doing a great job for me, as well with, the marketing and tell me how much product I need to send in and doing all that stuff for me. Because I wouldn't be able to do it myself. So it's a lot to learn.
It is. And you're doing all that since the beginning. They helped you launch on Amazon and set you up with the listing and everything. Did they do that from the beginning for you?
So I initially set it up, but I think I messed that up. And so the first company that I brought on, I think it was called Po2 or something like that. They had to kind of fix that. But they were a bigger company and I was really small, so they weren't doing a lot for me. They did fix that, but then I found like a smaller company, you know, who didn't have tons and tons of brands, so they could focus, you know, more on getting Spatty going. And so I went to them and they kind of helped it be successful. They were the first one to kind of really help Spatty be successful, you know, on there. But they broke up. And so then I used somebody else. And then now I'm back with one of the guys who was with that initial company who helped me out so much. He started his own company doing that. So that's with the Canal Consulting that I'm using now.
Nice.
Yeah.
And do you remember how it was like when you launched on Amazon? Do you remember the numbers, the revenues through the first few years?
I remember it was, for the first few years, it wasn't great because we weren't doing any of the marketing. I didn't know about, you know, all the Amazon marketing or like all like, I guess, the wording that you have to use in a certain way. So, I mean, it would be a few $1,000s, you know, I might've made, you know, 20, 30,000 a year off Amazon in the beginning.
Without the marketing.
Yeah, without the marketing.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. So yeah, okay. I don't know what's good and what's not. But yeah, and so
I mean, you had profit too. Do you like
yeah,
that was your revenue, right?
yeah,
And you had net profits from that too, right?
yeah, because Amazon takes a huge chunk of your money.
Yeah, they take 15% for the selling fee and they take a cut for the pick and pack fee for their service, the FBA service.
Yeah.
So it ends up being like 25% approximately, give or take.
Yeah.
But you had a pretty small product, so I'm guessing it wasn't hefty for the pick and pack fee. It would have
Yeah,
been on
that
the lower side. Yeah, for sure.
And then like a small and light shipment that I could do. So I think that helped with like shipping fees and stuff too. So, but I didn't know about those. This was this other company. Like the first company didn't help me with any of that stuff, but the second company, they're like, oh, well, you can save money this way. And you can save money this way. I was like, oh, that's great. You know, I could have been making a lot more money, but you know, now we kind of know this stuff, and the advertising I think helps a lot. Amazon's harder now because of all the competitors that have come out and all the Chinese products that are selling on there now have taken, you know, a big chunk of the market now. So, but Spatty's still a brand name, and so that, you know, helps.
Yeah, and do you mind sharing some of the like revenues on Amazon from like the first few years to compare it to the last few years?
Well, so I think in the middle was the best. So like the first couple of years, like I said, it was probably about, you know, 20, 30, you know, for the year. And then there in the middle, I feel like there were several months or several times, you know, we would be making, you know, over 20 a month. You know, when there was maybe like one competitor or two competitors. And so, yeah, probably like around 20, 30 a month, you know, and then during Christmas time, during this time of the year, it's always really great. Like Spatty was on the Today Show today, which I didn't know about. So that's a happy surprise. And then my Amazon sales, I did like 30,000 just today so far in sales on Amazon. That's what they, you know, sent people to, you know, so you get huge bump like that when, you know, it's like, oh, that's a whole month of sales that I got, you know, just in a few hours today. So, you know, that's really good. And so, I think now I know what I get paid. They take about 20, so I probably get about, I mean, we're probably still doing 20,000 a month. So I might've been doing, I'm getting like around 8,000 and 9,000 every 2 weeks from Amazon after they take their cut. So what would that be then? So maybe
8,000, 9,000.
I don't look at the, so I'm getting around 8,000, 9,000 from Amazon every 2 weeks from sales. So we're probably doing.
So you're probably making like 30,000 a month. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing now. So then probably in the middle, then I was bringing home at least like I say 12,000 every 2 weeks, kind of like in the middle. So we were probably doing more like 50,000 a month, kind of when there wasn't as many competitors.
This is like before COVID.
During COVID was great. Like everybody was shopping.
Oh yeah.
Everybody was going online shopping.
Online sales went up.
Sales actually went up during COVID. So
that's awesome.
But yeah. So yeah, probably about before though too, I didn't have as many competitors. I'll have to kind of look back more at the numbers for you so I can get something more exact. But
Sure.
yeah, around it.
Is there any like lessons you can share with us with Amazon? Some of the lessons that you've learned along the way to improve, or maybe some mistakes that you've made that cost you money?
Yeah. So I think finding the right company to help you was a big thing. The company I have now, really cares about Spatty and the product and, want it to do well and really puts a lot of time and care into it. He kind of helped rewrite all of like my info page. And I think, all that really helped with increasing the sales and what they choose to spend money on with marketing wise.
What's the name of the company?
Canal Consulting, Caneel
Okay.
Consulting. Yeah. But yeah, he's done Connor's the one I work with. He's done a great job with that. So I really appreciate him. And then when he was part of Pitch Deck, there, helped me a lot. And then Po2, I think is the first company that I had. I mean, I appreciate them because they helped me kind of fix what I had done wrong and make it, FBA, because I was just shipping myself and not FBA. So I think that was a big thing. I think FBA is worth it because you get the 2-day shipping. I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's not 2-day. I don't want to buy it. They go, let's go find something that is 2-day. So I think being FBA is important. I think that definitely increases sales on there. And, I think marketing on Amazon is important too, because if you're not doing it, somebody else is, and they're getting the sales, from it. So, I still have to market just on my name too, on Spatty. I still have to put money to that because other people will market off my name as well for the, competitors. So, so you still have to do that too. But I think the big thing now that costs, a lot of money on Amazon, which is one of the frustrating things with it, is when people will like use stuff that you have trademarked, and so then you have to, get on there and make a case saying, hey, they're using my trademark, and Amazon does a great job with taking them down, but it's just the time and effort that goes into it, and then they pop back up, so you have to spend. I feel like I have to spend a lot of money on lawyers sometimes with working on getting all the infringement taken down.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of competition and fraud has been happening on Amazon, and dealing with it can be frustrating. But I think they're coming with better tools to overcome that. I think one of them is like if you're trademark, that really helps. If you have a trademark, especially, and I've heard from other sellers, they get trademarks in different countries so they can be protected they can fight whoever is infringing on their product in those countries with using their trademark.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Let me see here. What else did I wanted to ask you? You are selling in retail too, right now, right?
Yeah, so we're in Albertsons, Walmart.com, and then we ship to like some distributors, but I'm not sure, who they sell to. I know I sell straight to Albertsons, and then we have we sell to L&R distributors and Imperial distributors. And then I sell something called Fair, which ships like a lot like mom and pop shops. And then iHerb, are some of the places that we used to be in Bed Bath Beyond, but that was the first big retail I got into. But it's sad, but they're starting to close a lot of their stores down, or all of them pretty much. So it's sad to see them and Bye Bye Baby go.
That's true. Yeah, I mean,
we were in Walmart actual store for a while, but now they just have us on the .com. We were on there. We were in Walmart probably about 8-9 years.
So one of the mistakes that you put in here is I was looking to work with someone who's in the music industry to promote.
Yeah. So this guy reached out to me, saying he could hook me up with Beyonce and Rihanna and like all these like big celebrities, and like they could represent the Spatty. And I was like, he's like, I know this guy, he's my friend, he has the hookups, he can get us there. It's like, just, and I was like, so I reached out to that guy on Instagram who he had mentioned, hey, this guy's saying he knows you and he can do all this stuff. he's like, man, this guy's always using my name. He's like, I have to send him cease and desist letters all the time because we used to be friends, but we're not anymore because of stuff like this. And yeah, he's a producer, out there and has produced a lot of albums. He's like, well, I want to help you out. And I was like, yeah. He's like, I don't know what I could. He's like, well, what are you looking for? And I was like, well, it would be great to have celebrity endorsements and, that type of thing. And so like he was like, we're talking about, the Kardashians, and I'm like, oh, that would be great. So I was like all excited about all this stuff. And then we go to write the contract. I was like, okay, well, if you can really get me all these big names and do this stuff, I was like, let me give you, talk about, maybe a percent of the company. And then I'll give you, money per month for advertising, to give to the celebrities, for them to out. I said, but I don't have a lot of money for this. And he says, oh, I can, knock their prices down really low because of who I am. And I said, okay. And so we wrote the contract up. He was like, well, this isn't how contracts are written in Hollywood, and I was like, well, and he was like wanting to make all these changes to it. And I was like, well, instead of us going back and forth and doing this, I was like, if you want your lawyer, to write the contract up, that's fine. And so his lawyer wrote the contract up, but his lawyer put himself into the contract, and he was wanting a percentage of the sales. And he was wanting, and then his lawyer put in there like, well, he also gets a monthly salary and all this other stuff too. And I was like, I just don't have the money for this. And I had already spent like, it was probably around $30,000-$40,000, on paying lawyer fees for all this stuff. And so I just had to be like, I can't do it, and I just had to cut my losses. And, I'm like, this would have been, it all sounded great, in the beginning, but I should have talked it out more before I got all excited and like, yeah, let's do it. And, spend all this money.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. And did they have like connections? Like, did they connect you with anyone, or was just all in building up to?
Yeah, it was kind of all build up to it. His girlfriend or fiance, I think it was girlfriend at the time. I think it's his fiance or they're married now. But she was like one of the basketball star wives or girlfriends, and she was on like one of those shows. And so she has like millions and millions of followers. And so he's like, show you that I'm real. Let me get her, and she's going to, post on her Instagram or whatever, your spatty thing. So she did a story, on her thing, like right away, he, called her and called back and showed me. She put it on there within like 10 minutes of us talking, of doing that. But, how did sales go, from her doing that? And so, I think he would just kind of show me that they were like legit. And I think he really was, wanting to help me. But I do think, that those, you hear about, all the horrible contracts and stuff coming out of Hollywood. Usually all these stars and stuff get mad because they feel like they get screwed over in their contracts, when they sign it when they're young and stuff. So I think it was just like that type of situation,
I see. Yeah.
I just couldn't, I couldn't do it. And I saw that I was going to be losing more. And I just had to kind of,
yeah, like maybe you dodged the bullet
$3,000 rewriting this contract. So.
Right. Yeah, it could have been not in your favor in the long run. So yeah. That's interesting. And you also put here that when you had a surplus of money, you spent too much money on photos.
I did. So like I was really trying to build up my social media, because you hear about people going viral on social media. And I was like, I didn't have a lot of pictures. And I was like, and I'm not a photographer, so I don't feel like I take great pictures. And so I was like, well, there's these companies out there who they have this database of all these people who want to take pictures for companies. They can get free product or money or, whatever. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll send them free product and they can take the pictures for me. And it cost $10,000 for each of them. So I did one, I spent $10,000, got a lot of pictures back. And they were okay, maybe like 30% of them. And so somebody else was talking about how great this other company was and how, they wished they could afford them, but the pictures were so great. And I was like, well, I do need some better pictures. And I kind of had a surplus of money at the time. And so I spent another $10,000 to get more pictures and videos. And, I was using it on social media, but my social media really, I haven't like gotten a lot of sales or anything from social media. I've paid several different people to try to bring up sales from social media or try to get more recognition on social media. One girl did really good, but she moved out of the country and got a different job and she didn't have time for it. But she had a video that went viral that had over like 1 million views, and like Nylon picked it up and Glamour picked it up and Allure picked it up. So like that was really awesome. And I was like, oh, but then she couldn't do it anymore. So I just, so it's like, I just can't keep spending money on, pictures and people doing it. And so I have this one company that's good pricing for pictures and videos out of Florida that I use. And so they send me like 4 photos, a video, and I just have them send me like 4 TikTok videos a month. And I do all this for less than $500 a month, for that, which I think is really good. And so I just, post myself and I try to use GPT to tell me to use. Like, how can I word this? So what hashtag should I use to try to do that stuff? And
right.
I mean, it just hasn't really gotten a lot of traction. I just couldn't keep putting money there. It doesn't mean one day it's not going to, but I just didn't have the money to keep putting into it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it can be expensive to, to have a social media manager and keep your content going. It could pay off if you're getting a lot of sales, like a lot of people are using TikTok Shop and Instagram. I personally, see a lot of ads on Instagram and I'm like, oh, this looks like a cool product. And I go on Amazon to check it out. And but it is expensive. I understand. I mean, video ad could cost around $5,000, a good video ad, so are you managing the social media yourself now?
Yeah, I'm doing it myself now. Like I said, I've used several different people over the years, and that the one's the only one I've really been happy with. It's not the other people, they did good with posting every day, but it just, even I've tried, Facebook ads with several different companies who kept promising, this is perfect for Facebook. This is perfect for Facebook. I was like, I think it is too, but I've never gotten anywhere with it. I was like, we can try, I'll give you a try and, hopefully it'll work out. And then it doesn't. I'm like, okay. but yeah, I have a TikTok shop and, I started that and, but yeah, it just hasn't really taken off except for that one video, I think, that did really well.
Yeah. How much did you pay for that video or for that?
Well, I was paying her. Yeah, I was paying her monthly to do my social media. She would, do TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. I can't remember what I paid her monthly. I'd have to look back and see. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it wasn't anything like too expensive. Like I thought it was reasonable what she was asking.
Nice, like below $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
Okay, that's like reasonable. And she does like probably brand strategies for different brands and does content.
Yeah.
She was managing your social media too.
Yeah, she was doing all that for me too. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And then she just kind of, once she moved out of country and got a job over there, she just wasn't able to kind of keep up with doing that plus her job. So
and the last one that I have here is you put early on I went out to Culver City to do a celebrity gifting for the Oscars.
Yeah, I was so excited about that too. It's like, oh, we're gonna meet all these celebrities. I was like, well, it's just off of Shark Tank. I think that was one of the thousands of emails that I got, after being on Shark Tank. And they were like, come out here, but you had to spend like you had to pay to be there, to have your spot. And I don't remember if it was like 9,000, 10,000, 12,000. I don't remember. It was somewhere around that to actually even, have a spot. And I was like, well, that'd be great to have pictures with celebrities, with my product. And, I thought that would help. But it was still like in the very early stages of Spatty. So I had my Spatties, but the packaging wasn't great yet. It was still that same one that we were like, using the glue dots and putting it on there. And I didn't really have any nice like displays. We see now if you go to sell your product to retailers, they have all these, really nice displays. And I didn't have any of that. I had like a little table and like put like little half empty things of makeup on the thing, and I tried to make it look pretty, but it wasn't anything fancy. I didn't look nice, but I did the best I could, and I think most of the people who came, I didn't even know, probably 80% of them. I did meet William Shatner, so that was cool. And I think I think the guy's name was Fern, but I think those were the only. The guy who was on Austin Powers, I think his name's Fern, who was on there.
I forgot his name.
Yeah, but he was, cool to meet. And but I think most of them are just there just to grab the gifts and go. They'll stand and smile for a picture, but it really wasn't. I don't think it was worth the money. It was just, I guess it was a cool experience to get a habit and do it, but I wouldn't do it again.
Nice. Yeah, I bet it was a cool experience, but sounded a bit expensive. And if you didn't get anything out of it, then maybe yeah, it's one of those things where you're like, oh, let me try it. It could happen, it could not. It's almost like a gamble, but you never know who you're gonna meet, who you're gonna run into, who's gonna be interested, who's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And the last thing that I would like to end with.
Oh, who else? We met Buzz Aldrin too. I think he was there.
Oh yeah.
That was really cool. Like, oh, you went to the moon, but I don't think he really wanted to hear it. I hear that all the time.
That's funny. The last thing that I wanted to end with is, would you do it again? Would you? What is something that you would tell your younger self? And when starting out, like, what is something you would tell someone who's starting new? In the end of all, like, we are a channel, we educate new sellers and we educate them on how to start their own e-commerce brands. And from your perspective, knowing what you know now, going through this entire journey, what would you tell yourself, just starting, and would you do it again?
Yes, I mean, I think I would definitely do it again. I think my experience, like I said, is unique because I got my start on Shark Tank, a national show. So I didn't have to do, I feel like, a lot of the initial legwork to get your product known to retailers or to people. Because I had that, when I reached out to retailers, like, hey, this is from Shark Tank, so I kind of had that. I don't think most people, aren't going to have that. So that kind of really helped me out. But I would definitely do it again. For me, like with all the things I spent money on, that didn't work out, I still wanted to try it, right? Like, I'm one of those people, like, you don't know if you don't try, and I don't want to be 10 years down the road and be like, oh man, I really think I had this great idea, but I never did anything with it. I wonder if it would have ever made it, like, I didn't want to go back and think, what would have been if I would have done this. One of the main things I want to do with my life is I did want to be a mom and have kids, and I wanted the ability to be able to be home with them. I know it's not for everyone, but I didn't want to send my kids to daycare. I wanted to be home with them. And I know I'm not saying it's wrong to do that. That's just me personally, what I wanted to do. And so Spatty gave me that ability to, be home with them, because I could work from home and, be here with them. And so that was like, one of the biggest blessings to me. That's really the main thing that I wanted, from this business, was to be able to do that. And it gave me that. So no matter if Spouty lasts another 10 years, another 2 years, lasts forever, it gave me kind of what, I was wanting to be able to do with my kids while they were young. And so I have a 2-year-old now, that I'm still able to, be here for. So I'm hoping it lasts me at least another 3 years before she starts kindergarten. But it's a lot of work, there's a lot of times that were great. There are a lot of times where I would cry, like, is this worth it? It's not easy being an entrepreneur, and I think, and one of the things I learned too, is you can't always take no for an answer, for a lot of these retailers and stuff. I know I was told no by Bed Bath & Beyond. And then I think the next month they reached out to me and said they wanted to bring it to their stores, or the buyers are always changing in these stores. They turn over so quickly. And so you might have one buyer that's like, this is a dumb idea, or I don't think it's going to work. But then, 6 months later, it's a new buyer. It's like, oh, this is awesome. Yeah, let's get it in here, And so then it could be the opposite. You could have a buyer like, oh, this is great. Let's get it in here. And then the buyer changed over and you get a new buyer. It's like, no, I don't think it's going to work, So it's just something you have to,
something to consider.
And, I think a lot of people do really well with social media. And I think that is a good place to get word out about your product. As well. I haven't had the best experience with it, but I know a lot of people who have had great experience with it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being on here and sharing your journey. Congratulations on all the success. And
thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for, sharing all the ups and downs and some of the lessons you've learned along the way and some of the interesting stories that you've had. Definitely was an interesting journey.
Yes.
So thank you for being here and sharing that.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.